Welcome back to the Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. Michael Pachter here, hoping to answer your questions. It's looking like we're only answering questions from SIFTD.net because that's an active community sending us a lot of questions. But ask questions not YouTube. Ask questions on Twitter, and we'll try to get to some of those as well each episode. At Michael Pachter and copy at SIFTD Games, hashtag Pachter Factor. Welcome back to Pachter Factor. Our first question this week is from the SIFTD site from Alex. How do you get the name Alex? That's awesome.
We're a brand new site.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Ubisoft released Far Cry 4 and Assassin's Creed Unity 1 week apart in 2014. This year it's releasing Far Cry, Primal, and The Division just 2 weeks apart. What is the strategy behind this? Does this hurt sales of each individual game? Great question. And I think the truth is that the strategy is satisfying investors, which is too bad. I think that if video game publishers weren't public companies, and if they could manage their business so that they could, maximize their revenue and not answer to anybody about when they delivered a game, they would behave more like Bethesda, which tends to time its titles out, 6 months apart. You certainly didn't see Fallout and Doom launch the same week, and you're never going to. I should have said, ZeniMax, I guess, because Doom is id, but you're not going to see these guys dump the games on top of you. I think Ubisoft has Christmas comps they have to hit. I think they have full year numbers they have to hit. The full year numbers included Division, and I think that Division got delayed because it wasn't 100% ready at holiday. And I think that the weakness in performance from this year's Assassin's Creed and possibly lower than Ubisoft expected results for Rainbow Six kind of made them pull Far Cry Primal into this year. I think that they're worried about not hitting this year's numbers that they committed to their shareholders they would hit. So I actually agree with you that each individual game suffers slightly to the extent that they have an overlap of players. Absolutely they suffer because you're not going to play them both at once. It's not clear to me that the timing is going to influence whether you would buy them both ultimately. So if they came out 6 months apart, you still might only buy one or the other. So the only people that are really impacted are the guys who intended to play and buy both. And if you intend to play and buy both, you probably buy it later. The question is just, do you spend as much money buying it later, or do you wait till it's discounted at $40? Or do you forget about it altogether? That's the big risk. So I would say it does hurt sales of each game slightly because there is some number of people, 10, 20% of purchasers, who would consider buying both games, and you probably lose, 10% of those, which is 2%, 1 to 2% in sales. It's probably that kind of a small number, but still not necessary. I mean, better to time games spread apart so that you don't compete. You want to compete with your own product. That totally makes sense to me. So very, very good question. The strategy, though, is to satisfy investors. And Ubisoft will probably respond to this and say, we never try to satisfy investors. I think that their investor relations guys are great, and their CFO is great. The problem is if you put a forecast out there that says we're going to hit numbers, you got to hit numbers. So I actually think that they're trying to satisfy investors. Okay, our next question from the SIFTD site is from ESET, or ESET, right, ESET. Last year was a great year for PC gaming. It seems that in spite of great news about consoles selling really well, the PC is doing even better. Do you think PC gaming is the future? Sure. I think much more so than you even imagine the PC is the future. Look, PC gaming in terms of console-like game experiences is not doing that great. It's doing fine. I mean, you can ask Bethesda how many copies of Fallout were sold for PC versus sold for Xbox versus sold for PlayStation, and I guarantee PS4 and Xbox One copies, there were more of those than there were PC copies sold. And it's just, so PC's fine, it's just not as big as the other two. It isn't something that's mutually exclusive. They all three can thrive. but it is zero sum, so no one's buying it on the PC and then buying it again on the Xbox One. And that's true of most games. It's not true of some inexpensive games. You might buy Plants vs. Zombies, for $5 on Steam on your PC and own it for $10 through the PlayStation Store or something. But short of that, nobody's buying Fallout on both a PC and a console. So the reason I do think the PC is the future of gaming, though, is that the PC is used for so many other types of games other than console. You can play League of Legends on your PC. You can play Hearthstone on your PC. So there are some pretty compelling experiences not available on the console that are available only on a PC or tablet if it's Hearthstone. And those have hundreds of millions of people playing. So they're a huge market, huge opportunity. And frankly, I think that consoles ultimately are obsolete. As soon as the next generation, I think you're going to have games offered to PC gamers day and date with console and offering you the opportunity to buy a console controller, connect your PC to your TV through a Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connection, and play the game on your TV, because a smart TV should be able to talk to a PC if it can talk to the internet. So if they can do that, then games will be able to do that. And if you suddenly open up the market to anybody who has a PC, you're talking about a couple of billion potential gamers, not a couple of 100 million potential gamers. Now, everybody doesn't have a PC that is graphically competitive with a PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, but by 2019, there will be hundreds of millions of PCs out there that are graphically competitive. And imagine as we see things like virtual reality take off, all those people are buying PCs to support their VR experience. Why wouldn't they buy their games that way and play them on their on their monitor, their television in the living room with a console quality controller happening. So yes, I think you're going to get a resurgence of PC beginning about the next decade, so about 2020, and I think that carries for the decade of 2020 to 2030. I think you're going to see phenomenal growth in PC gaming because I think it ultimately replaces console gaming completely. There's my bold prediction that I'm not making this week. We have a question from SIFTD from Dastardly. When do you think Microsoft and Sony will reveal the slimmer versions of the Xbox One and PS4? Do they need a platform like E3 to do it? Wow. I am far from an expert on hardware and on what actually goes in. I saw, as I said in an earlier episode, I went to the Origin PC display and I saw what they can do in a very small space. And even hard drives now are really thin, but the slot itself is actually kind of complicated. But I think that getting rid of a disk drive and getting rid of the hard drive would absolutely do it. I don't think there's a lot of demand for getting rid of the disk drive because gamers seem to like the flexibility of buying disks, trading them in, or portability or whatever. So the disk drive is about as thin as it's going to get, which is probably like that. I did see, though, how they pack graphics cards into the back of a monitor for an all-in-one PC. Graphics cards are about that thick. So, you're talking about that thick. And again, the stuff that makes your console fat is the cooling, having air flowing around stuff and having fans. And I think if you ever go to all solid-state drives, you can have a thinner box. The problem is that solid-state drives today are pretty expensive, and it's cheaper to give somebody a hard drive, mechanical hard drive and a fan, than to give them a solid-state drive. So I guess the answer is, when solid-state memory gets down to where you can get a terabyte for $25, and I don't think we're close yet, then sure. But I think you gamers, and God bless you, you demand 500 gigs to a terabyte of storage. And if you can't do that with flash, solid state drives, then you need fans. And that's just what it's going to be. So the other thing is that you see these slimmer consoles in every generation because it's cheaper to make them. And so they're not going to make a slimmer console just to make it slimmer. I mean, Microsoft could offer you an Xbox One right now with a terabyte of solid state for $800, but no one wants to pay $800 for a console just because it's skinny. So I don't think you're going to see one soon, and maybe E3. I think E3 is fun if it's sexy. If the console's really sexy and you want to get the picture printed in billions and billions of views in the press, in the conventional press, then sure, that's a great place to do it. Well, this is probably the best question I've ever gotten. So our last question from SIFTD.net, from Wampler13. Please pardon my ignorance, but what exactly do you do? Could you describe your typical workday if there is such a thing? Do you travel much for your job, work ridiculous hours? What's your favorite and least favorite parts of the job? All right, so here's my day. I'll just give you today, because today's actually not a typical day every day, but it's a pretty typical day during what we call earnings season. So my day actually started last night because GoPro, who I cover, pre-announced, which means they said that they were going to miss their guidance badly last night. So I had to write a note last night, which meant I had to get in here at about 4:15 in the morning. So my day started at 3:15 when my alarm went off. Unfortunately, I had dinner plans last night, which I set up with a guy from out of town months ago. So I was out till 10, got up at 3:15, showered, shaved, sort of shaved, drove into the office. I live 31 miles away. It took 31 minutes. Got here at 4:15. I spoke on our morning call at 4:40. The reason I had 25 minutes cushion is because I also, in addition to writing a GoPro note last night and publishing it this morning and talking about it on our morning call, I also had a Netflix earnings preview because they report next week, and I was going to talk about them as well. And I also had Best Buy report their holiday sales this morning, which was planned and I knew it. So I had to get in early enough to read that and comment on the call. Did the morning call from 4:40 to about 5. Started tweaking my Best Buy model because their numbers are different than I expected. Started working on let me see, I have notes coming out. This will be aired after, well, I won't name the names, but I have notes coming out on 3 other companies this afternoon. And so I started working on writing those, and obviously they required model changes. So I worked on the models for the next couple of hours, had 3 or 4 phone calls, 7:30 or so rolled around, and Shane walked in to tape this month's Pachter Factor. I unfortunately didn't know all this stuff was hitting when I set this up weeks ago because the GoPro was a surprise. I could have published the Netflix preview another time, but I just finished it, and the Best Buy date hadn't been set yet. So here I am with one of my busiest days, taking from 7:30 until about 10 in the morning. As soon as 10 rolls around and I boot Shane out of here, I've got to write a Best Buy note, which is going to take me at least an hour, and get through the model. I've got to get those other 2 notes finished because I'm not done yet. And then at 1 o'clock, the market closes, and I get to wait for the NPD to hit at 1:30. I'm on Pacific time. So I prep my NPD call because I host one at 2:30 for investors. I typically have between 30 and 70 investors on a call. So these are all clients who pay my firm, and this is the biggest month of the year, December. Fortunately for us, GameStop reported holiday sales on Tuesday, so they already kind of took the wind out of the NPD, so we kind of know what the number's going to be. But I got to do that. My call goes from 2:30 to 3. Then I get to write an NPD note, which should take me till about 4:15 or 4:30. And then I have my man's football league, baseball league dinner tonight in Pasadena. So that's at 6:30. So if I can get everything done by 5:30, it'll take me 35 or 40 minutes to get to Pasadena and go to dinner until I hope 8:30 or 9, blowing out of here, and I'll get home at about 10, and then rinse and repeat. I have another day tomorrow. So it's a hard job. I typically work 12-hour days, and travel time adds usually an hour and a half to that. And when things like GoPro happen, 12 hours isn't enough. I have to stay up late and write notes, and that happens, unfortunately, more frequently than I care to admit. So it's a pretty shitty job. Do I travel a lot? 60 nights a year in hotels, all for work. And I have about 450 meetings with investors when I travel. So I travel to talk to investors about stocks. I've been giving you the typical day, but what exactly do I do? I am held out as an expert on companies, not games, Activision as a company. So I have to understand everything they do. I have to forecast how their games will sell. I have to forecast whether their esports initiative will be costly or they'll make money. I have to forecast how much they'll invest in TV shows and movies. So I have to figure all that out, which means I have to understand all the competition for every game they make. I cover video game publishers. I cover a handful of internet stocks, I think 8 internet companies: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Zynga, King, Pandora, Netflix. I probably didn't name them all, but somebody else. I cover some other odd media companies, so GoPro at one end, Best Buy at another. My favorite and least favorite parts of the job. My favorite is that because I cover the stock market, I cover companies and how their stocks do, the story's different every day. So, for example, I might hate a company whose stock trades at 30, but if the stock goes down to 20, I might love them. Least favorite part of the job is that I guess I hate being wrong, and it's impossible to be right in this job. So, if I was so good that I got every stock pick perfect, I would not be this job. I would be investing and making billions of dollars getting stock picks perfect. It's a hard business. So I'm wrong a lot, I'm right a lot. I'd say that the pain of being wrong doesn't outweigh the pleasure of being right. So, I revel in my few victories when I'm occasionally right. Often wrong, never in doubt. So I hope that explained it, but I write a lot. My typical note is like 4 or 5 pages of text, not of actual content that I write. So when I talk about a company, I don't just say, oh, this company sucks because they missed, or they're great because they beat. I explain what drove the beat, why I think it's sustainable or not sustainable, what I think will happen next quarter, and how I think it impacts the management going forward. So I write a lot, and investors seem to respond pretty well to it. So hope that answers your question. Thank you for joining us on this week's Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. If you're watching it on YouTube, you're obviously not a SIFTD member, so we would love to have you join. $30 a year, come on, it's worth it. If you can't afford it or choose not to, that's cool. Watch it late on YouTube. You can read all the Nintendo press. They will publish everything that I say on SIFTD.net before you get to see it on YouTube, so you'll know. And try not to get too outraged if I say something you don't agree with. Just ask a question on Twitter at Michael Pachter or at SIFTD Games, #Pachter Factor, and we'll try to respond. It's fine to tell me I'm an idiot, but just phrase it as a question. And the question, do you know you're an idiot? I'm not going to answer that one, but anything that doesn't have idiot in it will be fine. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.